As many of you may know, I wore my hair in braids recently. I just posted a 2-part series of my complete long-term protective style regimen. I left the links below. Remember this part of the video where I was like, my edges are really fragile compared to the rest of my hair, so at some point, I usually replace the braids along this section to keep them from thinning out. Well, this time around, I forgot to do that. I kept my hair clean, moisturized, and lubricated while it was in braids, but I didn't redo my edges. I can't say me forgetting to redo my braids in the front was the only culprit. This has definitely been a slow-moving progression for some time. The braids to sped things up. It's easy to ignore this because at this stage, it doesn't cause much of an inconvenience. But the real secret of how to keep your edges full is to be mindful of them and keep them from thinning out too much in the first place. Because the more advanced it gets, the more difficult and less guaranteed it is to reverse it. I posted a 2-part video on the 3 stages of thinning edges and how to restore them. I left a link to them below. Here's a chart breakdown of the 3 stages from that 2-part video. It's been a few years, so I gave it a little facelift. According to this chart, on the left side, I'm at the mid stage. My edges are visibly sparser than the other areas. Check. I feel some hairs, but I can also feel some of the smoothness of my scalp. Check. On my right side, I'm at the beginning stage. Minimal amounts of thinning, hairline intact, checked. I feel just hair. I don't feel any smooth spots. Check. Once your edges start to thin, they continue to thin out faster and faster. So even though one side of my head is more advanced than the other, I'm just going to treat them both like they're at the mid-stage. If you think about it, you know the damaging things you do that contribute to your edges thinning out. In my case, it's accumulated tension from updo styles over time and not redoing the front section of my braids. So a big part of my regimen going forward will be to avoid tension to my edges like the plague. So as my edges heal, braids are a no-no. Here's a quick breakdown of what I'm doing. I think it's worth sharing because it's a more realistic and well-rounded approach. My approach to fixing a problem is to isolate it or put it into quarantine. So I'm literally sectioning off the front portion of my hair as it heals. The thinning of edges is not just in the perimeter section. Thinning is occurring throughout the whole front section. You notice it more in the parts. See the difference? My mid-stage side is definitely more scalpy than my beginning stage side. That's why I consider this my edges. With my edges sectioned off and isolated, I can give it more attention faster and more frequently without having to deal with the rest of my hair. Dense, thick, and tightly textured hair like mine gets heavy as it grows out, so it doesn't take much to put tension on my scalp. And the edges are the most fragile and sensitive area. So for the most part, it's normal for this hair type to experience some level of thinning over time that needs to be managed. You see this a lot with locks. Eventually, as they grow out, if you're not mindful and on top of it, the weight starts to make you look scalpy. Going forward, I'm going to make it a habit to make my twists super loose at the base. No more tight twists, even if they're chunky. I'm also going to leave this isolated problem area out of my hairstyles. Tension is like 80%, maybe 90% the reason why edges thin out. Small changes like this makes a huge difference. Another benefit to isolating the problem area is being able to moisturize and lubricate it fast without having to worry about the rest of my hair. For most of us, the hairs along the edges are high in porosity and fine, so they dry out easily. Exposure to wind can even make them dry out faster than the rest of our hair. Twice or 3 times a week or so, I plan on massaging my scalp, then moisturizing my edges with a little bit of the pH stabilizing spritz. Then gently scoop my sebum up from the less fragile parts of this section and spread it down. As I wait for my sebum coverage to build up, I'll use the Herbal Hot Oil Treatment to lubricate uncoated sections. That's it. It takes less than 10 minutes to moisturize this isolated section. Herbs create balance hormonally, microbially, and keeps your scalp pH balanced. So I plan on doing herbal treatments on my isolated problem area more often. Once a week, I'll do a herbal treatment, then rinse it out, then spritz, then oil, then retwist if needed. Because this area is small, it's a quick process. I never use heat directly on the front part of my edges in the first place, but as my edges heal, I'm not going to use heat on this whole isolated area at all. I don't have a set time of how long I'm going to do this, but I'll post an update video in a few months. Just in case you're wondering about the back section, I also have it in twists that are loose at the base, but due to how dense my hair is, I have the back in 2 sections. I want to devote more time to the front of my edges, so once a week I'm gonna scoop and spread 1 section at a time. And stretch my wash days to every 2 months. This way I can dedicate more time to the front without neglecting the back. Notice that the solutions for each stage of thinning edges are pretty much the same. This isn't really something that people like to hear, but hair follicles are really sensitive, in the sense that once they die, it's almost impossible to restore them without some kind of extreme lifestyle change or medical attention. One thing for sure is that you will never be able to restore your edges if you're still doing things that puts pressure and tension on them. Herbal treatments are very stimulating and healing to your whole scalp. It doesn't happen overnight, but consistent use of herbs will wake up follicles that aren't all the way dead yet. They also create a bacterial and hormonal balance on your scalp. So rather than wasting your time and money on products that are promising something you know in your heart it can't give, try herbs. They're the real deal that everything else is just trying to imitate. I'm going to be posting an onion juice update and some more videos on new herbs next, and I'll put them in the herbs playlist. One last thing. I stumbled across an interesting video by Felicia Mesadieu. She had mid to advanced stage traction alopecia and basically big chopped her edges. She also used a lot of treatments, natural oils, and tools. This is what her edges looked like after 11 months. And this is what her edges look like after 2 years. It definitely grew in well. I'm not saying you have to go and shave your edges, but she recorded her progress and regimen really well, and she has a lot of helpful tips. I left a link to some of her videos below. I'm going to give you an update of my progress in a few months. As always, thanks for watching. See you in the next video.